Let's see. Is it live? It's always the question. All right. We are live, and I see audio. So let's see what happens. I'm Trent. Welcome to the Dallas After Effects user group. You can find us on Facebook at the, let's see if I can type it in here real quick. It's facebook.com/groups. Dallas AEUG. Yes, I got it. All right, here we go. So that's where we are on Facebook. And then my Twitter handle is AE Trent. So that's where you can find the group. That's where you can get in touch with me. And if you're in the Dallas area, please come join us. Okay, so first thing for today is we had a Mother's Day video we did recently. John shot most of, if not all of, this video. Were you there on this? You showed up. Okay, yeah, you were there. So we have this shot here, and it's a tracking shot. We're just dollying in here like this. And we have these lamps in the shot. And got back to the office and realized that we were going to put text on the screen, but the text really didn't have anywhere to go except maybe in this area with this left lamp over here, because that's the only potential place where there's just a flat color, basically a flat color on that wall back there. So the idea was to just get rid of that lamp, so we put text there. First thing I did was pre-comped my footage. Just let's get rid of that. Pre-comped my footage and made sure I had only the length of the footage I needed, and then went to the end of the footage there and right on into the image, because I want to replace this wall back here. I need to get as close in on this wall as I can to start off with my still, so I'm not really trying to pixelate that in Photoshop. So just to get a picture out of here, I can do two things. One, I can render it out of After Effects. I can hold, well, let's do it this way. We'll do Save Frame As, File. We can also do Option Command S, okay? So I can do it that way. I can Option Command S to just drop it in as a JPEG in the viewer, or sorry, in the render queue. I'm going to go ahead and make it a PNG. It's just RGB, not RGB plus alpha. And then we're going to save this guy out as so it gives me here the frame number in case I need to go back and match that frame number to something that I've output from After Effects. But I don't need that frame number. I'm just going to call this wall shot.
You went to the last frame because it's the closest.
Yeah.
Area.
Yeah.
So if you had a reverse camera track, you would
start at the first frame. Yeah. Okay, so just save that way.
Somebody complained to the gun.
Yeah. So I'm going to open Photoshop here, but while I'm opening Photoshop, I'll show you another way to do this. I can right-click and do Reveal in Finder. If you're on a Mac, you can open this in QuickTime. We'll scroll to the end there and do Command-C to copy. Quit QuickTime, open up Preview, and do File, New from Clipboard. There we go. So now I have just a still image of that. And I can go, when I close it, actually, close image, then it'll say, where do you want to save it, or do you want to save it? So I would just call this shot 2 PNG. I don't need the alpha because there's no alpha channel, really. And just use my drop down, save it in my last known location, like that. And there we go. So if I look out here, my render queue, I still have not rendered this yet. Hit render. And then if you want to know where it rendered to, sometimes you render something and After Effects just keeps the same render location from the last time you rendered, last time you added anything to the render queue. That can help you because if you're working in the same project with multiple compositions rendering, you don't have to go tell it where to go every time. But when you are adding something to the render queue, when you add something and change the location, then everything goes to that same location until you change the location again. So if I change the location for project A, and now I'm working in project B, project B's render files could potentially go to project A's render location because I didn't change where the render was going, okay? So if I want to know where it is, I just come here and click. Ah, look at there. It opened it for me after I clicked on it. So that's an easy way to get to where your files were rendered from your project, okay? Now, I'm just going to take this wall shot and drag it into Photoshop. So all I need is this area over here. I have my marquee tool. I'm just going to come over and grab about like that, and then I can crop here. I also have a crop tool I could use, but this is basically what I want to use. So I'll show you crop tool because I have a little extra over here I don't need. The crop tool wants to snap. John, is there a hotkey I can? Okay, so I'm using Control, and it's not snapping. That's a good thing. And then I just hit return to accept that crop. And now the fun begins. So I'm going to keep my background. I'm going to keep the original file and just hit Command J. I could also do layer duplicate layer, which is what that is. And with my cloner, my stamp cloner right here, I'm going to come in and just use the wall itself to fill in, get rid of this lamp. Okay. So I'm holding Control and Option, and I'm dragging left to right to increase my brush size, and I can drag up and down to increase or decrease the feather, like that. I'm going to, let's go a little bit smaller. I'm going to go over here with my crosshairs and click up in this area like that. And I can come down here and line up this little dark area, the shadow, start drawing in.
You tried the content aware fill.
Let's try it.
Sometimes it'll give you like 90% of the
Okay. Let's try it. So
What'd you say, John?
John asked
Oh,
about the
right.
content aware fill. So you're going to have to talk me through this.
Okay. You can use the selection brush. You just kind of brush around.
Okay.
That's the
This guy?
Yeah.
And then-
Just gotta get it's going to want to grab extra, so you'll just invert it.
Okay.
Takes a little practice. You could also just use the
How about that? If I paint inside
just draw
there.
around it too with the lasso too.
Okay. So we'll get rid of that. And maybe we'll get rid of that. And I can, oh, goodness gracious. Is
Why don't
it,
you just use the lasso?
all right, lasso. Oh, good. Little movie. Later. Thanks. It's like, hey, you've tried this several times now, and you've failed at it several times.
They just upgraded the mask refine tool in Photoshop like this week. And that's what I was telling you about.
Yeah. All right, so I've selected this guy. And now
And you do
I
edit fill
edit fill here.
and do content.
Oh, there you go. It even thought, hey, he probably wants to content fill that. So that's pretty snappy, guys.
So there's a little bit you can clean up there. But
Yeah, this is why we invite John to the meetings. That and other reasons, but okay. So yeah, I'm just gonna. I wonder if I could do a little bit of this and maybe do a lasso again
yeah, you can just keep doing that.
and.
Does it work with patterns or anything like that? So if we have grass or does it only work with kind of smoother, non-contrasty surfaces? Or
I don't know, it'd be worth a try.
I've used it for trees, grass, and all sorts of things. It's good shot.
That's awesome.
I didn't know about that feature.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna actually pull out my stamp tool again, my clone stamp tool, and drop my opacity on this thing. Select up top and just kind of do a little bit of feathering in here, like that.
So the nice thing about using the cloning tool to do the cleanups is you're retaining your grain of
Yeah.
image instead of just trying to paint over with a brush. You can add it with a solid color versus something that's
Yeah.
a little bit of texture.
That was a great tip. Okay, so now I can save this wall shot PSD just in case I need to go back to it. And then I can also save as, and I'll just save as PNG and call it wall corrected. Don't think we'll need Photoshop anymore. And I can drag my wall corrected here and come back over here to my shot. Okay. So we're going to do this. Let's just see how long this takes to track. So I'll copy my shot. Tell you what, I'm gonna, let's see, am I broadcasting on Wi-Fi? Yeah, I was trying to broadcast my Wi-Fi. I'm very sorry about not having Wi-Fi right now.
Say what?
I was trying to. I Normally-
Guest pass doesn't work.
I don't know what it is. Normally, I try and just broadcast Wi-Fi from this computer and give you a password, but I don't know what the guest Wi-Fi is.
Are we getting video and audio?
We should be. Fingers crossed.
Hairs too.
Hairs crossed. So I'm just going to duplicate this guy here. Duplicate. Call this meeting. And get rid of this stuff. We will reset this camera tracker. I'll show you where camera tracker comes from. Animation, menu, track camera. So once I put it on there, it just goes off and starts doing its thing. And there aren't a whole lot of frames in this to track. So it's telling me up here the percentage it's done. And normally, if it's a fairly steady shot with a lot of good track points in there, then we'll be able to get a good track. So what we can
This
do,
makes me feel bad. I don't have the 3D camera tracker.
that's okay. There are other trackers you can find on, free ones you can find online. So just so you know that exists.
Thanks, you.
Yeah. Okay. So you can see track points. These guys way up here, pretty easy to see, but we also have tracker points back here. And I want to get on this wall. The lamp's not where I want to be. Probably this chalkboard back here is where I want to be. So I'm going to increase my target size so I can see where I am here. And I can lasso a few of these, see what that gives me. It's looking okay. Yeah, I think I like that best. Okay, I'm gonna right click on that target there, and we'll do a, let's do a null and a camera.
So you're selecting a flat plane that is at the same Z position as the wall
As
you're
the-
trying to.
Correct. If the wall, yeah, if the wall had had features on it that I could see and track, then I would have come over here and tried to use that. I don't want to use this up here because these guys are on a plane that's closer to the camera. The lamp, same for the lamp. And these guys back here should be, I mean, because maybe parallax isn't quite so big back here, then those guys might work. But because there's such good detail here on this chalkboard back here, it's easy to just say, okay, that's on the same plane as the wall. So I'm going to go ahead and set everything up for that position right there. And now I have my null. I just need to look at my rotation on the null. And it looks pretty flat back there. So I'm just going to zero all of this out, like that, and move the null over to about where the wall is. I'm really having to drag this thing hard because it's so far away.
You click shift and back there.
That's what I'm doing. Yeah, it's even that much farther. Okay, so what a drag. You're right, that was a good pun. So now I have my null in there, I have my wall corrected, and I will just replace the null with the wall picture. So I'll do Option, Command, and the slash, or I can grab the layer, or sorry, the footage item here, drag it in, and hold Option, and whatever's selected, it will replace that.
You can do that.
Okay.
Nulls.
Nulls, you can do that with. Footage items, you can do that with. You can't do it with text layers or with shape layers. And that's a total whip, but there are workarounds, I guess, for all that. But because shape layers and text layers don't have an object that lives, or an item that lives over here in the project panel, then it doesn't know how to replace that. Okay, So we have this teeny tiny little bitty wall back there. Scale it up. And because I replaced as a null, it made the opacity 0. I'll just come in here. I can click in and 100. I can drag it. That. I can even do a hotkey. The hotkey is Shift Command T. No, sorry, Shift Command O for opacity. That brings that up, and I can change the opacity there. I'm going to reset my anchor point so it's in the center. Let's just pop in here. I'm using the left and right greater than, less than symbols, sorry, which is also comma and period on the keyboard to zoom in. And I'll hit Shift P to add the position value to my transformation properties dropdown, and I'll hit Shift S for scale. Just try and match this up a little bit. Wall back there. I can do Shift Command H and hide my bounding boxes. Don't know what to do. Let's see. Looks like that moving the anchor point is a little bit better for me. Okay. Here we go. So we're done, right?
Gotta match this match.
Kinda.
Yes. Now I have goofy cushions that are in front of my wall. So I need to have the cushions in front. All right, let's just see how that looks. I'll RAM preview. Looks like it's a little bit in front of the wall. So I'm going to scoot it back and scoot it over a little bit. Scale it up, see if we can match it just a little bit better. Still looks like it's a little bit in front. I am holding my shift key down when I move because I'm moving so far. Okay, just a tiny bit more.
The wall's cutting a chunk out of those cushions.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to fix that.
So what are you measuring right now?
Okay, I'm looking at the parallax.
Make sure it stays alive.
Yes, because the wall needs to stay in line with the wall, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So I'm gonna copy that position keyframe and delete it. And you can see if I just drag this guy forward and you look at this area over here,
Want to keyframe it?
like that. Okay, so now if I play through here, you can see, can you see? I mean, you can barely see that it drifts.
Very subtle.
Yeah,
Sliding to the.
sliding to the left.
But what Trent's doing is he's just moving it forward and backward in Z space and adjusting the scale to just visually match the scene a little better.
Right.
So the tracker isn't affecting that?
The tracker is not affecting that. So what happened once I selected my track points over here and I created the null, it also created a camera.
Oh, okay.
And so anything I drop into the scene will interact with the camera like it was sitting in this particular scene. So the camera that I put in After Effects is, for all intents and purposes, matching the camera from the actual footage.
And your original pre-count is a static window. You know, like it's not affected by that camera you created. So
Right.
it's just a background image basically. It does not move.
Draw a custom view of the thing so we get a better idea.
Okay. So Pedro's asking for this right here. And we might, it might, your camera might be so far off
Yeah, scales, right?
that the scale's off. There we go. So there's the camera, and you can see, where's the wall? Yeah, the wall is way over there. So the camera is moving through this space here because it's trying to match the shot.
And that was actually a good thing to look at, because if you know your original camera was on a straight, what is it, like a track system, like the
Yeah.
path that it figured out looks like it's a little off.
It looked like
So
it
that
was
might-
weird.
If you were doing this for a professional project, you know, you might go back and retrack your camera again using different points just to see if you can get that
Yeah.
straighter probably.
Yeah, so what John's saying is, because we can see the camera is not on a straight path like it was when we had it actually in the shot, or doing the shot, that when we look at the tracker points here, we can kind of see, do they match what we think they should match in the camera? If a lot of them are kind of popping off and on, then we can tell that the camera doesn't really understand that those should be there. It's trying to drop them maybe because it doesn't have as an accurate a track on those. So what we can do is go in and take like organic things. If anything's blowing in the wind, we can get rid of that. If there are windows in the shot or reflections in the shot, we can circle those and just delete them like that. And it's actually recalculating every time I do that. Okay, so we're hopefully at some point we're getting the most accurate track that we can get by telling the camera, yes, those are good tracking points. No, these are not good tracking points.
You know what would have made this all a lot easier?
What's that? Doing it all in 3D.
Just move the lamp to begin with.
Yeah, that's on me.
I wasn't going to bring that up, Jeremy.
Well,
Was
to be
it?
fair, we didn't know if this shot was going to be the shot with text. So we shot it, and then the decision was made in post, hey, we want text on the screen.
Right.
Great. We've got lamps.
We got lamps.
Yeah.
Okay, so now what we have is a shot with cushions. So what we can do is come in here and try and figure out where the cushions are. And it looks like maybe if you look at these points right here, then they're about where the back of the cushion would be. It doesn't look like there's too much drift there. So what I'm going to do is just circle these points and do a solid. I don't want to, oh, it recalculated. So I guess we're going to get a solid and a camera. And hopefully that doesn't mess with anything else. Is that the one it just created? I think it is. Okay. So we now have a solid that's sitting right about where the lamp would be. And I can increase the scale here and just come in here with my pen tool. I'm actually going to decrease the opacity. I can see what I'm doing. And sorry, my Wacom pen makes double clicks sometimes when it should only be single clicking. Like that. Actually, I need to go all the way out. So I'm going to go ahead and abort that and scale this guy up even more, because I really do need to kind of cover that whole wall area right there, just in case. That I'm going to reset my rotation. So now I have my pen tool. Now I'm going to create my mask. I can adjust these a little bit as I'm dropping them in, and then go back later and adjust some more.
Does it matter what frame you define this on?
No, I don't think so anyway. I think it just matters where the object is while I'm, I wouldn't want to do the mask not looking at the frame, I guess, but I think it just matters where the object is in the shot while I'm doing the mask. Because even if I'm way back here, it should be stuck. Okay.
Can I bring up something real quick?
Yep.
If the object you're trying to mask out is like a three-dimensional shape,
Uh-huh.
and as the camera's tracking towards it, you see more of it changes in shape,
Yep.
in time or whatever. This won't work, but because this is a couch, it's fairly close to being a plane.
Right.
Yeah.
If there were much more of a change in the parallax, seeing the back of the couch, whatever, it would be a little more difficult. I would need to do something else, like maybe a mask tracker. I'm not positive. I don't use mask tracking a whole lot, so I'm not sure if that would really work. But that'll be. Say again. Yeah, roto brush might help. Yeah. So at this point, I've got this mask. I'm gonna maybe hit F here and feather it a couple pixels. And then the thing that I want to be in front of my wall is just the cushions from this shot. So I'll duplicate the shot, put it here. And I'm going to use the alpha channel of this guy. It's just this. Use the alpha channel with my track matte here. Use alpha matte. So now we have just the cushions. And I need to take this back to 100%. And you can see there that the wall is in the shot. Cushions are in front of the wall. The lamp is gone.
Easy something.
How does everybody feel about that?
Astounding.
That's good.
And
I'm glad you did this. I saw the same tutorial a while back.
yeah,
It was really cool. Is that they were filming this guy who's out supposed to be in the desert, like taking a sniper shot, like from some rocky outcropping.
Mhm.
But where they were filming, there was a bunch of graffiti on the rocks that they had to take off.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing, and I've never been able to find the tutorial. I'm sure I did a lot of searching for it. And I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
But
okay, very good. I'm happy about that.
One thing that I like to add is that sometimes when you have, especially outdoors, the track points may never actually give you the plane that you're looking for, or there's not, like I said, there's not enough. But you can do it with just one single point. You can do a right click and do, create a null, and then it won't have any left or right of the perspective, but it still be on the Z space, and then you can just try to match that to your scene to look at the camera.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay, so what Pedro's saying is that you can just right click this one null, or sorry, this one tracker point here, and drop a null in, and it will give you
It'll give you a Z space
at least the correct Z space.
and left and right, and it will face the camera.
Yeah.
So the orientation will be flat, and then you'll just adjust that
Yeah.
to what you need.
That's also very, very good. Very good advice. All right. Any more questions or thoughts about this?
All I know is tracking has always been that one thing where every time I have to do it, I have to pull up my notes.
Yeah.
I hope I'm not the only one. Like,
Yeah.
it's really is kind of a hard concept because every shot is so different, and you always run into things. You're like, okay, I got to troubleshoot. This is always going to work this way every time.
Yeah.
So it's
Apply
giving it
tracker.
practice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Track.
Track and replace now. Okay. So as I'm thinking through this, I know Jeremy doesn't have the camera tracker in his After Effects, and maybe one or two of you guys don't either. So I'm thinking,
Just older versions? Or
yeah, older version. What if we duplicate this again? Call this track points. Let's see what we can do. So I'll open this up, get rid of anything that has to do with, let's delete that altogether. Okay. Get rid of anything that has to do with having a camera tracker in After Effects. So now what we'll do is try and figure out how could we make this thing work with just track points. Now, I know that I will need to track a good solid point from one location and a good solid point from another location. So if I'm just looking at this here, I can see maybe this corner here and maybe this here possibly. So in order to track, I'll need to right click this and open the layer. So it doesn't open in a composition, doesn't open the composition, just opens this layer here. As it sees it kind of as a footage item. I'm going to load up my tracker, and I'm going to track motion like this. And I'll do, let's say, position and scale. If I just do position, I only get one track point. If I do position and scale, I'll get 2 track points. I'll take this first track point and see if I can drop it right there. Hopefully, that will be a good enough point to track. And then we'll drop this one up here like that. So what we're looking at in this set of boxes is the box inside is what you are going to look at to track. Okay, this is your track feature. Yeah, your sample region. Out here, this box is how far do I need to look for that sample region. Okay. Of course, I can take it and make it huge, but then After Effects has to do a whole lot of thinking when it's doing this track. Okay. What I want to do is have, especially if there's a lot of motion in the shot, I want to have enough area to look at, but not so much that I bog the machine down. Okay, so we're going to do a transform here, not a stabilize or anything. And we can just hit this track forward button. And as we watch it track, we can maybe see if it's jumping around or anything. It looks pretty good. Didn't take too long. And let's see, I will bring my wall in here like that. And because I have my track done, I'll hit U and you can see all of the wonderful things that were tracked here. I'm going to edit my target and use wall corrected. So that's where all of these transformation keyframes are going to go onto that layer. Hit OK and apply. It's going to ask me, do I want X and Y? And I'll say yes, because that'll give me my position X and Y, and it'll give me my scale. Then we can go, let's close this window. And let's just see what it looks like. I hit 0 to RAM preview. And except for just not being in the right spot, it looks pretty good. So now we can take this guy. And let's see what all of our transform keyframes we got. So we got position and scale. For position, if I just grab my wall now and move it like that, you can see the motion path changes because I only had one keyframe selected. I was just, say again?
Anchor point.
Not the anchor point, the position.
It's actually adding.
Yeah, so it's
Changing.
changing that keyframe right there because I'm moving my layer. But if I click, and I could actually lasso these all these keyframes, but if I click on my transform property position, if I'm on a keyframe and I have any number of these other keyframes selected and I move my layer, or I scale my layer, or I change my anchor point, or I change my rotation, everything adjusts relatively to that keyframe that I'm sitting on, right? So because I have them all highlighted and I'm sitting on a keyframe, I can move this around and everybody, I'm going to hide my bounding boxes again with Shift Command H. And see if I can guy in the right spots again. Like that, and I'll do scale as well. So I got some new hotkeys for you guys. On the number pad, you may know this, apologize if you do. On the number pad, if you hit plus and minus, you change rotation. Okay. You do shift plus and shift minus, you change by 10 degrees. Okay. If you do option plus and minus, then you get scale. You shift option plus and minus, you get scale by 10. Okay. And we'll just go back to position. That looks pretty good. So now we're in the right spot. Let's see how the track looks. It's pretty good. Okay.
Very good.
Very good. And now we just need to figure out what we need to do with these cushions. So we'll, I'm going to actually twirl that up and do another track motion. And it'll open my layer back up. So I'll do scale and position. And let's see about that corner there. And maybe, I think if I do that, it'll have enough contrast and the cushion will be locked. No, let's not do that. Let's do the other corner of this lamp, like that. Okay. So I'm in the middle of this thing. I can either go back to the front and reset my tracker points, or I can track backward and then track forward. That. And sometimes there are gotchas. Sometimes the grain in the shot will cause problems. The tracker will jump around. If it jumps around, sometimes all you need to do is just get it back to the point where you kind of estimate it should be and track again. Just move forward. Sometimes all you need to do is just back up, delete a keyframe, or even just back up where you're comfortable with how solid it is and do a single frame forward, or just hit go again. Just start tracking again. Sometimes it's that easy. Sometimes you have to go in, because you have keyframes, you can actually grab your tracker point and actually move it to the right spot a couple times until everything gets back on track. It's can be a hassle, but it's way better than having to do the whole thing all the time by hand. So it may be good for you to just experiment around with the tracker, because it can help you in a number of ways.
How many versions back does the tracker go?
I don't know. Pretty far back. Jeremy, what version of After Effects do you use?
CS 5.5.
5.5. So I think it may even go back to 3. After Effects version 3. Okay. So now I have this tracked up. I do want a new solid because I'm going to use my masking method again. But I'll just come in here and grab this solid, drop it in my scene, and select my tracker 2, and edit target, solid, and hit apply. X and Y, okay. Now this thing is pretty big. I wonder what happened over there. Okay, After Effects preview viewport update failed there for a moment, but now we have this guy tracked into our shot. I just need to maybe scale him down a bit. That. Scoot him over. We'll zoom in again and do the mask. I'm going to select my pen tool. Just get outside of where my wall would be.
If I use that method you're talking about, where you select all the keyframes, it's still working CS 5.5.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Yes, sir. There we go. Like so. Take my opacity back up to 100%. And I'm going to come in here and just add a keyframe, or sorry, add anchor point for my mask anchor point. And what am I trying to say here? I'm going to add a mask point there. And hit F again, feather my mask just a tad. Once again, duplicate my original video layer. And use my alpha matte for my mask. That. And when I unsolo these guys, here's the wall. That is very exciting, guys. I have no idea why After Effects is doing this.
That's awesome.
That is great.
What?
I have a feeling that we are overtaxing the video card here and it's having problems. Very exciting, everyone.
Very exciting.
Take off the mask and see if it.
All right, so we're just going to go with collapse transformations. I don't know why that works, but apparently that's going to do it. Oh, no, it's back. Hey.
Still have the camera tracker on? Duplicate?
Yeah, let's take that off of there. Yeah, maybe that fixed it. Thank you, Pedro. Woo!
I actually liked it better the other way.
I did too.
Success.
All right, so there you go. There's 2 ways for you to track and VFX replace or remove a lamp or whatever you want to remove in your shot.
Probably 5.
Yeah.
Is this the same kind of tracker that you use if you wanted to keep text in line with somebody's movements? Have you seen that?
Yeah, you would probably use. Yeah, you would probably use this tracker to do that. I would say that. What would you say?
I would say 3D tracker. Because if you're trying to position it into a scene, it's not.
Well, okay. So is your question, you have a camera moving around and you want text to sit on the ground or stay in space, or you have a camera that's static and someone's moving their hand and you want to lock the text to their hand?
I see this effect a lot where there's text floating out in front of somebody and they're coming back and forth and moving sideways. So it moves as if they're connected to it spiritually or something.
That would be not the 3D camera tracker. I think that would be this After Effects tracker.
Yeah, and I think if you once you track the position, you can make whatever you have 3D
Mhm.
and rotate it to kind of match a little bit of, give it a little bit of depth or
Yeah.
a little bit more interesting.
Could do that. Could maybe add the tracking data to a null and then make the null 3D and attach a layer of the text layer maybe as a 3D layer in front of the null. So when the null moves, the text would move in parallax with your camera. Does that make sense? Sort of, okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the next tutorial, friend.
What's the next one? Let's see. The next one is going to be a little bit on the linear function and the ease function in expressions. Okay, we're just going to touch on this a little bit because I want to expose you guys to it, and then maybe if you don't have a whole lot of questions about that, if everybody just gets it right off the bat, then we'll move on to a visual loop, not an expressions kind of looping, but visually looping some ocean waves. Okay, so here we go. This is going to be linear. And in expressions are really wonderful parts of After Effects that are code you can use to have After Effects do things mathematically for you. You can have, if After Effects does the math is way more accurate than your math is going to be. And After Effects can do math with time and like subframe math and all this stuff that can help you do your job better. Okay, so what we're going to do is look over here at motionscript.com, and you'll see where I learned all about expressions. So Dan Eberts created Mastering Expressions long time ago. And this thing has so many fun examples of expressions, but it also just kind of talks you through what are expressions and ground rules, learning about expressions, learning about JavaScript, just kind of talking about how After Effects looks at values that it has and values that it needs. So all of this stuff is very involved, but if you're just learning expressions, this is a great place to start. Even if you don't read the whole thing, kind of getting your feet wet a little bit, just copying and pasting some stuff into After Effects will help you start to understand what's going on. So he even has things called practical examples. And the idea would be that you can copy this straight out of his webpage, go apply it to the rotational value of something in After Effects. This thing here. We'll move our anchor point up. I just hit the Y key to get my pan behind tool and change my anchor point. And scale a little bit like that. And I'll just twirl down rotation with R. And to put an expression on, I'll hit Option on the Mac and Alt on the Windows machine. Paste this into this little window that pops over here. This is a JavaScript language. And just hit Enter on my number pad. You can see that After Effects is now doing something. I didn't have to do it. I didn't have to keyframe this thing swinging back and forth. So expressions are wonderful, and I recommend that everyone start getting to know expressions.
Can you go back to the expression again?
Yep.
I just want to point out, if you're wondering, well, what the heck is this expression
Sorry.
really doing? I mean, other than what you see, obviously, you can click on the graph view, actually see the values relative to each other. So it's talking about rotation here. You can see it's creating what's called a sine wave.
Mm-hmm. And there's my frequency. I can change my frequency here to say 0.25, and it'll happen less frequently.
Did it automatically set the axis point, anchor point?
I set the anchor point up here, and then it just rotates based on where that anchor point is. So if I go back to the beginning here, I change the anchor point to there. When it rotates, it'll rotate around that anchor point.
So that becomes, with regards to rotation, the anchor point is the pivot.
Yeah, the pivot point. Now it's a washing machine instead of a pendulum. And if I want a record player, then I could, on this rotation, I could say One of my new favorite expressions is just the ability to say 360 degrees is how far I want to go over how much time. Let's say 2 seconds, then multiply that times time. Now it just rotates infinitely as long as I have length in my timeline here. It'll just go. Okay.
Helicopter.
Yeah, looking down on the helicopter. I do not want to be right here in reference to a helicopter. All right, so we're going to talk about the linear function now, and I'm going to give you a great example of how this can be used. So just so you know, you already have in After Effects a preset that can provide the functionality that I'm going to talk to you about. We're going to do a little different than they have it, but what you can do is click in your effects and presets search box and search fade in. Let's just see. We don't type frames. We just do fade in out frames. All right there. I'm going to double click it, and it applies these two effects. And also I'll hit EE, and we can see that it also applies this expression here. Okay. So what it does is it looks at the endpoint, which is here. There's the endpoint. If I can double click this guy. There's the endpoint. It's referencing this point in time right here, wherever the endpoint is. And then the fade duration. And then it's looking at out point, which is here, and fade duration. Okay. So I'm going to hit N to set the end of my work area. And I'll hit 0 to do my RAM preview. And you can see that where my layer starts, I get 15 frames of a fade in. And where my layer ends, I get 15 frames of a fade out. Now, there are a lot of exciting things to know about solid composite. And this thing here is specifically for After Effects. You won't be able to go find that anywhere except by adding it from this preset. But we're going to do this by hand in just a sec. So let's say I want to do 30 frames like that. That's just 1 second if I have my comp at 30 frames a second. And no matter where I put my layer in here, it adjusts the opacity because of this solid composite here based on where my end and my out points are. Okay, so let's look at the graph for that. Now if I scoot my layer, you can see that it changes the graph. Okay. And I don't have to have any keyframes. That's the beauty of having expressions. One beauty is that you don't have to have keyframes. And if I change my layer, how long it is, how short it is, then I don't have to worry about rearranging my keyframes later on. All right, so let's do this by hand now. We're gonna just delete that guy and put a new one back in here. And we'll use our actual opacity transform property here. And I do want to squeeze this in here just so we can have something more accessible than 30 seconds of a comp. All right, so we need to change the opacity based on the endpoint. We need to have a length that our fade is going to happen, and we need to change based on the out point. So we can set up two variables that say fade in for this amount of time and a variable that says fade out for this amount of time, or we can just have one variable that says, I know when you fade in and you fade out, I just want you to have one fade duration. So we have in our effects controls something under the expressions controls. There are a lot of wonderful things under here, but the thing we're going to use is the slider control. And I can rename this, and I'll say this is going to be fade seconds. And we'll just start with 1. Okay, 1 second. Then we're going to come down here to our opacity and hold Option, click. Now we have an expressions field we can type into. So the first thing you get is this transform opacity. Really all that's doing is saying whatever this value is in transform opacity, take that value and give it back. That's what it's saying. That way, if you enter out of your expression, it doesn't throw an error, okay? If you do change something in here and you get an error, that's there to help you understand that you've done something incorrectly. Now, you're working with expressions, if you're just starting out, you're going to get a lot of errors. Even if you've used expressions for a long time, you probably will still get some errors. But it's important to not give up. Find someone that also likes expressions. Talk with them about it. Get a stress ball. Set it next to your desk. Who eats a stress ball a lot? You'll get giant forearms like Popeye. But eventually, expressions will start making sense. Okay. So that what we saw there was transform.opacity. Like that. Okay. You can also reference this value by typing in value. That helps me if, say, I want this value, but I want this value divided by 2. Okay, so I always want whatever this value is that I can see when I click into this box, I always want that value divided by 2. Then if I do 50, then divided by 2 gives me 25. Okay, that's the value. All right, so just to set ourselves up with some variables, we're going to have the fade time like that. We're going to pick whip. This is your pick whip here. After Effects will write expressions code for you if you just use the pick whip. I'm just getting the value from that effect control and adding it into here. And I have a variable just so I kind of make it a little more readable for myself when I get further down into the expression. Okay.
You can name it X. Y.
Yeah, name it X, Y, name it do this thing now, your dog's name, unless your dog has a stupid name. But you can't name it something that already exists in After Effects. If I call this endpoint, then it will read the endpoint of the layer. Okay.
Yeah, so you kind of need to know
So you have,
all the variables.
yeah, you need to know what the variables are, or just kind of understand that if you type something in and it doesn't do what you think it should do, maybe you typed in something that already exists in After Effects language. Okay. So we'll call this fade time, not fade rhyme. We could call it fade rhyme. So now really all it's doing is just pulling that 1 from there and putting it there. Okay. Now we're going to go to, I think all we need to do is say linear here. This will be our fade up. Okay. So we'll do linear and we're going to reference, we have to have something to reference some variable that exists somewhere, and After Effects already has the time variable built in. That's wherever your time marker is. After Effects will give you that time back there. And we're going to have, I'll just do this real quick. What we're looking for is a variable, and we want to know the start and the end and the minimum and the maximum. Okay, so that's basically what this expression is this function is looking for. It's looking for you to give it a number, and then it's a range mapper. Okay, so if I give it the number 20 for the start and the number 40 for the end, and then I say the minimum is 0 and the maximum is 100, then at 20 it range maps to 0, and at 40 it range maps to 100 and does the math for you in between. Okay, so my start, anybody want to guess what start is?
0.
It's going to be endpoint. If I do 0, it'll look at time here. It'll look at time, and when time is at 0, that's when it'll start this range mapping. Okay, so what I want to do is give it the endpoint of my layer. Wherever my endpoint goes, that's what I want to use as the starting. All right, trick question. It's not really a trick question. What I want the no, actually, it is kind of a trick question. I will just tell you. I want this to now be, man, if I can just get to the point here. I want this to be the endpoint plus my fade time. Okay, I'm not going to the out point. I'm going endpoint plus fade time. Okay, so I'll do endpoint plus fade time. Okay, now the beginning, because I want it to fade from nothing to something, my minimum is going to be 0. My maximum will be 100. Okay, so I'm mapping this range from the endpoint to the endpoint plus this 1 second here from 0 to 100. Let's see if it works. We can even look at our graph. Okay, so we did it. Congratulations, everyone. There was much rejoicing. Yay. So we now have a fade in that happens wherever the endpoint starts. All right? Does that make you feel powerful? Yes, I can tell. But now we want the out point to happen. Okay? So we're going to have to turn this linear. I think we're going to have to turn this into a variable. At least that's how we're going to do it. We'll call this T for transparency. And even if I do this, the last variable that I've put in on the last line, that's what After Effects reads back into, or reads out of the expression. Okay, so even though I gave this a variable of T, and that's what T equals, because it's the last line in the expression, that's what it gives back. Okay, so now what I want to do is do my no. Okay, I don't need this variable. I don't need this variable. I just need the time, I think. So let's try this. So linear time, and we're going to start at the out point. That's this guy right here, out point minus fade time. Okay, and we'll range map to the out point. Like that. And what I really want is, I think I do need a variable. I think I need to have, I'll go back and put this variable as T equals. So I'm pulling this variable here, this t. I'm pulling it from here, this information, and then I want it to range map to 0, like that. Okay? So as long as I am on this side of the out point, 1 second this side of the out point, then I'm always going to read this code right here. My first bit of code that said fade up from 0 to 100. And then,
Passing through that there.
yeah, just passing through the variable to here. So once I get down here, it says, okay, you're now past this out point minus fade time, which is 1 second. So I'm going to start range mapping back to 0. Okay. So that's 3 lines of code. You could maybe even, I don't know, maybe you could put it in 1 line if you really wanted to cause yourself trouble. But what that does is it gives me the ability to, I don't know, I can just duplicate this guy, change how long each of these are, where they happen in the scene. I don't have to worry about, am I adjusting the in point or the out point? All I have to worry about is where my layer lives and how long it is. Once I do that, I get all these little fades happening. So let's adjust a little bit. Like that. Just so we can see some stuff happening. Because I duplicated the layer, the expression went with it.
You could say this is an animation piece too.
Yes. So if I like that, if I like mine better than I like the After Effects version of it, I can twirl down everything that has to do with the expression, select all of that, and do animation, save animation preset, fade in, out, seconds. Like that, and just save it into my presets, and then After Effects will update here. There it is, fade in, out, seconds. So if I remove everything from here, like that, so the opacity was sitting at 50% now. So it just pops off and on there. If I just double click here, it's looking for the name. Let's see, let's make sure we can rectify this. It's looking for the name fade seconds here. So I would just need to change this to
Save.
fade seconds. And we'll figure out how to do that, because it does save the name if I do it correctly. So there you go, okay? That was from a preset. All right, so now let's figure out how to make that work like we want it to. Like this. We'll select that, we'll select that. Animation, and I can even tweak my presets that I'm creating and save over them. Like that. We're going to get this. We're going to make sure this happens correctly. Okay. So I'll take off my expression and get rid of my effect. select my layer, double click this, and there we go. Because I selected just the effect and not like that right there, I think that's what happened. I think when I twirled everything down and selected like that, it didn't retain the name.
Probably just select this side.
So that's a potential for what happened. But I know now that if I select that and I save it as an effect preset, it'll keep that thing, and I can go back to it, revisit it later on. So if I'm doing, let's say, let's input picture. Let's just get a picture from somewhere. If I have a picture in here. Let's say, oh, I'm real excited about maybe I shouldn't use that. There. I like Ramsey's deal he created for the group. And delete this guy. I want this thing to start at a certain size, and I want it to grow to a certain size, and then I want it to fade away. But I want to do that a lot, okay? So I can do my fade in out seconds like that, and there we go. We've applied our preset that we spent all of our hard-earned time creating. But maybe I also want to copy that right there and do a scale here. So I'll paste in my expression. I've got my fade time, that's correct. I'm gonna do a minimum equals 30, and then a max equals 100, and all of this should be good to go, except I'm going to do an S here. And my S, I'll tell you why to do that, is because if I just try and give a 30 or 100 back to the scale here, it'll only read one number out, but it needs at least two numbers here. Okay, so if I make it 3D, it'll need three numbers in the array. Right now, it needs two numbers in the array. It needs an X scale and a Y scale. Okay, I don't want those to be different. I want it to do the relative scaling, X and Y at the same time. So I'm telling it here, minimum here is 30, maximum is 100. And I don't need that. I need in point to out point. Okay, so what I've done is I've said my minimum's 30%, my maximum is 100%. When I'm looking at time, I look at the endpoint and I map that to 30%. I look at the out point and I map that to 100%. And then I've got a variable called S here. And with my brackets, I'll just tell it that's the value that I'm going to send back out. I have brackets because it's an array. I have two places in my array. I have a 0 place and a 1 place. The 0 place goes to here, the 1 place goes to here. And so it sends, when it's minimum, it sends out 30 to here, 30 to here. So both of those get 30. When it's maximum, 100, 100. Both those get 100. and it does the range mapping in between. Okay. So now, if I scrunch in my layer like that, then I have automated my layer fading in and zooming through. Okay. Now,
You know, I had the most creative idea. Remember that wall shot?
yeah,
How we track that copy of the wall to it?
yeah,
You know what you could do with that?
tell me.
You could have it so that as the shot progresses, that copied wall fades on. So it looks like the lamp is disappearing.
Yeah,
And then put text there.
yeah, we could make the lamp disappear. You're right. Okay. So now, you really, I don't want you to walk away thinking, I don't know how to do expressions, I'm a little frustrated, or I don't know if I could ever do that. What I want you to see is this exists in After Effects, and with a little bit of planning and just a little bit of code, learning a little bit about it, and maybe talking it out with somebody, you can automate something for yourself that you can then reproduce. If you're doing a wedding video, you need something that looks like this because you have a billion wedding photos, then here you go. You have a fade in, zoom up that you can use over and over and over again. You don't have to copy and paste keyframes or worry about how long each thing is. Okay. Any questions?
Use a, expression again?
Okay. Zoom in a little bit so you
I
can
think the
see.
nice thing about expressions like this is like what you just said. It's repeated. It's repeatable.
Yeah.
And I've heard there's kind of like two different kinds of designers when it comes to After Effects. People that are more comfortable with expressions and people that are more comfortable manually keyframing and intuiting their way through animation.
Yeah.
I think techniques like this, if you learn just a little bit of expressions, you can be a little bit of both. You know, you can take care of things that don't need that intuitive,
You don't have to.
design process.
Yeah, you don't have to feel out the
Yeah.
keyframing.
But then this also allows you to feel out the timing of your composition because you don't have to worry about, all these, if you're manually keyframing all these fade-ins, it'd just be nuts with a big composition. But this way you can feel the timeline.
Yeah.
But have all those fade-ins taken care of without
Yeah.
having to worry about that.
And
It's kind of a hybrid way of handling it.
yeah. Just I recommend that if you see expressions and you think, man, I sure wish I could automate some of this stuff that I've been doing over and over and over again, that you would at least start looking into it. That you don't think I only need to use expressions or I only need to use keyframes, because there's the hybrid, I think, is the most efficient and effective way to work, is to have both in your wheelhouse, your toolbox. Okay. And just kind of to piggyback a little bit on what John was saying with the repeatable and feeling out, you don't have to worry about your copying and pasting and moving keyframes and all that. Just the wedding example, the wedding video example, is I can just take all of these, set them here at the home, and say that I know I want everything to be 6 seconds long. I'm just using page up and page down to move backward and forward in my timeline. And I'll do Option in the right bracket to say to move my out points for all the layers at once, like that. And I can even duplicate all these layers. And now they are all 6 seconds long. And I can select them and say sequence layers, overlap them 1 second because that's how long my fade is. Now they're all sequenced. And they all happen every 6 seconds, or rather every 5 seconds because there's a second overlap. I know it's 4 seconds. Okay. After Effects has a lot of tools. Don't miss out.
Does that be sour?
Yep. Sour lemons. All right. So now we're going to look at the ease function. We may not get to the looping ocean this time. Ease is kind of the more refined brother of linear. Ease does exactly what linear does, except with easing on it. So instead of a hard move on your motion, you get a smooth move on your motion. We'll show you what I'm talking about. Like this. Okay, so I'll just scrunch this guy down. And just so we can see that there are more expression controls than just the slider, I'll add 2 point controls. I'll call this one start position. Call this one end position. And I think that's all we need to do right now. I'll just set my start position there and my end position right there. Okay. So now we're going to twirl down position and put in an expression by hitting the option button and clicking on the stopwatch. Okay. So you go here, hold option, and click the stopwatch. Yep. Thank you for asking. Okay. So now I know that I'm going to use ease, so I've got to have ease in there at some point. And I know I have to have a variable to look at. It's probably going to be time, because I'll say, start at 1 second, and when you get you're at this start position at 1 second, and then at 2 seconds you'll be at the end position. Okay, so we'll start with time, and we'll have a start position. No, I'm sorry, we have to read the time. We'll have a start, say starting time, because I know that is not After Effects specific. We'll say ending time, and then we'll use start position and end position. Okay. Now we have a bunch of variables in here that we need to assign values to. Time already exists in After Effects. We don't have to worry about that. But we do have to worry about starting time. Starting time, I said maybe 1 second is when we start.
Why wouldn't you just do the
The in point and out point.
Yeah.
I mean, it'll pop on and move and then pop off. So I'll do
I
it.
see what you mean.
Yeah, I'll do ending time and starting time just so the layer can always be on there. And then we'll do starting position equals, and we're going to use our pick whip again. Pick whip that point right there. And then ending position equals, I'm closing all of my lines with semicolons because that's, if you don't do that, then JavaScript may throw an error. And maybe that's all we need. Let's see, I'll hit enter to accept the expression, and it says, let's see,
You're
start
very
position.
good at this match.
I called it start position instead of starting position. So I'll copy that, paste, and we want to do ending position. Got to make sure your variables match. Okay. Pew! All right, so it's doing something from 1 second to 2 seconds, but it's not doing exactly what I want. So let's take a look. This point here is minus 1606. I definitely don't want that. Let's bring it over like there. We'll start it there. The ending position, right about there. Not exactly sure why it's being, maybe it's because of the scale. I think it's because of the scale of the guy. So I have scaled this guy down, and scaling it down changes where these positions are in relationship to where they would be if it were at 100%.
Let's say the animation preset was created. So
Yeah. Could do that. So right now, we're just worried about having a starting position and an ending position. And we're going to take a look at this graph so you can see that we have an S-curve now. Okay, because the ease function has the After Effects standard 33.3333 repeating value that drops in there. So if I were to, let's say, duplicate this and get rid of the expression there and set a keyframe at 1 second and a keyframe at 2 seconds, like that, and then just did an easy ease here, then I can look at my keyframe interpolation. Nope, that's not it. My keyframe velocity. And I can see that I get, this is my default value, 33.33333. And my curve looks about the same as that other curve, and we'll see if they match. So basically, doing this ease expression does the exact same thing as putting just normal easy ease keyframes on there. Okay. Now, this is going to be a pro tip. If you want to worry about this, then I suggest looking into it a little further. But this is going to be easing on top of the easing. Okay, so I have this ease. I'm going to call this ease 1 and is going to be most of that expression except these last two variables, my range, my minimum and maximum, are going to be 0 and 100. Okay? I'm going to do another ease expression here. Instead of reading time, I'm going to read ease 1. So ease 1 looks at time, and ease 1 does the range mapping with that 33.33333 ease to move from 1 second to 2 seconds. And then what it does is instead of changing the position, it's just going to set a range from 0 to 100. Okay. Then I'm going to read that range back in here. So ease 1 is only going to give me 0 to 100. So I'll read 0 to 100 here, and I'll say my starting value is going to be 0. The start of my range is 0. The end of my range is 100. And then my starting position and my ending position come into play. Okay, so I'm range mapping from 0 to 100, and then I'm reading that range back in and mapping the positions at that point. And I'll
So you're applying the second ease to this
Yes.
value.
applying another ease on top of that first ease. Okay, so you can see what it did here. If I show you this graph as well, okay, so this is the position for the expression, the graph values for the expression, and this is the graph value for the keyframes. Now it's a little goofy. Maybe if I change that, it'll change. No. So it's really just showing you two reds on top of each other, but you can see that there's a difference. Okay, and when I play back, you can see that there's a difference. So the expression starts off a little slower, ramps up in the middle, and slows down a little more when it gets to the end. Okay, so I changed my graph by doubling up on my ease.
You can do it a third time.
I can do it a third time. So let's take this box and we'll just change this to 200 on the Y. That. And come back into the expression here. So this is going to be ease 2 equals, just copy the end of that because I'll need that later. And I'm going to just range map again from 0 to 100. And then this will become ease equals, sorry, I don't need to do ease, yeah. Ease 2, so I'm reading ease 2, and I'm looking at the 0 to 100 range, and then I'm reading back the positions into there. Now if we look at all of these guys here, should be able to see all the values.
The second one is the same.
There we go. Thank you. So I've changed my ease again. Here, this is a much tighter curve.
So there aren't any, there's no built-in functions that will let you determine what decay is.
Not, I don't think so. I don't think there are any. I mean, it's possible that if I were to go look in here,
Because you just need to pass on a few variables.
Yeah. So that's where many of the things you can use in your expressions live. You can just go to this menu here, and they kind of give you a little bit of a description in there, but you kind of have to know how to read it in order to make sure you understand what to put in. So just know that it's there. You can go look at it. All right. So now we'll just touch on one more thing. We have seen that we can use expressions to change the curve. We're just going to look at keyframe interpolation now. Okay. So I have my solids. I'm just going to get rid of everything here that has to do with those expressions. Okay, so duplicate, and we'll call this using keyframes, like that. So we'll get rid of our expressions, get rid of all of our expression controls, and start right back here. I'm going to copy these positions like that. And then I can select, you'll remember that I can select the transform property position. And if all of these are highlighted and I'm sitting on top of a keyframe, I can just scoot that up like that, and everything changes relatively. Okay, so I'll do the same to this one. Scoot up, everything changes relatively. Okay, now I have a little bit of curve, but that's the same curve on all of them. All right. You can, I'm not going to tell you, you shouldn't. You can come in here and edit your curves in your graph here. Okay, you can do that. I am more confused by that than I am just understanding what the values do. Okay, so what I'll do here is select these keyframes, and the hotkey for this is Shift-Command-K to bring up the keyframe velocity. It also lives, right-click your keyframe, keyframe velocity. You can also get it here, keyframe velocity, and you can see that After Effects has already placed in these 33.33333 values. So I know that if I want to go back to what After Effects default is, and I click my keyframe to try and make it a linear keyframe again, then I do my F9 to make it an ease, and I open my keyframe velocity back up. If these are not 33.33333, After Effects has not reset them. It's possible that it could be somewhere around 16 or 65, whatever. The speed could be way off just because of some things you're doing with your keyframes. Just know that this right here is the default. So if you feel like something's really screwy and you need to get back to the default, that's your default right there. So I'll leave that at the 33.3333333. We're going to change this guy. So we were looking at that graph, and you could see that the more I eased on top of myself, my easing, the further out my slopes went before they became vertical. Okay, so the 33 is a nice smooth curve. If I go to 65 or so, then or 50, the curve is, you can think of it this way. If you're pulling your Bezier handles, then you're meeting in the middle at about 50%. Okay? So you're pulling your Bezier handles to the middle each, that's 50%. If you pull further than that, then your S-curve gets a lot tighter. So if you take your Bezier handles and you pull them all the way from one keyframe back to the other keyframe, from the front keyframe to the last keyframe, then you're going to make a really tight curve because you're going 100% back You're going 100% forward with your S-curve. So let's take a look at how these things work. We'll just say 50% here, 50% here. And we'll do these keyframes at, say, 65 and 65. I really like the way 65 feels when I'm animating. Then we'll do 100 and 100. Now we'll take a look at our graph, see what these look like. Our value graph. Okay. So you can see here, if I can actually grab the divider. Get it. I promise we'll get it. There. All right. So now you can see that this is the default. That's a little bit tighter. That's the 50% because it's basically like dragging my Bezier handle out to about here. That's the 65. That's the 100. Okay. Now let's see what they look like in the composition. I'll scale down so we can see all four of them. And let's see who we're messing with there. Take all these guys. Go back to my keyframe. Select all those keyframes. Scoot down like that. And I'm holding shift to just move one direction on the y-axis there. Okay. Now we can get a look at what the different curves look like. And this guy here, this 100%, is a little bit in vogue. Sorry, I'm going to go turn on my motion blur. And you can see what it looks like with motion blur on there.
Holding shift.
Say again?
I said holding shift.
Holding shift. Okay.
Thank you.
Do you guys understand what I'm talking about here? You feel like you could open up your keyframe velocity and understand what's happening when you put in numbers? That's all right now that you need to know. That's all you need to play with right now. You can eventually get into what happens when you change the speed, but let's stick with that knowledge, and I'll give you one more look at the graph.
So really the takeaway is just you can change it and do what makes sense for what you're trying to do.
Yeah, and something that's fun sometimes is, by fun, I mean I'm a motion graphics guy, and so these are the kind of things that I think are fun, is to take this guy here and instead of 65 and 65, have this be 33, and it starts 33, that's the outgoing, and the incoming is 65. So you can kind of see that it changes that a little bit. So it's a little more of an abrupt start, but the stop is a little smoother. Okay. Play around with it. Have fun with it. Challenge it. And I think you'll be a little happier with your keyframing. Cool. Thank you guys for being here. Again, don't hesitate to get in touch. Facebook.com/group/DallasAEUG. And please hit me on Twitter. Message. Well, not literally. Don't hit. I don't want anybody to hit me unless you're like giving me 5 or something. And then please message me. Please come to the meetings with your questions, and let's make this a community that helps and encourages and grows together. Cool. Thank you guys so much.